I just set the lasagna pan down on the counter when my sister-in-law wrinkled her nose and said it looked dry. I'd spent 4 hours on that lasagna. I'd made my own marinara from scratch, simmered it since 9 that morning, layered it with 3 different cheeses I'd hand-grated, because the pre-shredded stuff doesn't melt the same way. I drove 40 minutes with it balanced on the passenger seat, towel underneath so it wouldn't slide. And the first thing out of Renee's mouth, before she'd even tasted it, was that it looked dry. My mother-in-law, Diane, leaned over the pan, poked at the edge with a fork like she was inspecting a crime scene, and agreed. Said the top looked crusted over, said I probably should have covered it with foil for the drive. Then she said the thing that really got me. Maybe next time just bring something simple like a salad. Not everyone's good at the complicated stuff. I stood there in her kitchen, my coat still on, the oven mitt still in my hands, and I didn't say anything. I just looked at the pan. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been so proud of it I'd taken a picture in my own kitchen before I left. I picked the pan back up, said I'd just take it home then, and walked out the front door before anyone could stop me. 2 hours later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My name is Claire. I was 34, and I worked as a pediatric nurse at a hospital in Cincinnati. My husband, Mark, was 36, an electrician, and we'd been married for 6 years. We had a 4-year-old daughter, Lily, who'd stayed home with my own mother that day because she had a cold. 6 years of marriage, and if you'd asked me to describe my in-laws' house, I'd have said it was lovely. 2-story colonial, white shutters, a wraparound porch Diane decorated for every single holiday. From the outside, it looked like the kind of family you'd want to marry into. From the inside, every dinner felt like an audit. It started small, the way these things always do. A comment about how I seasoned the chicken. A comment about how Lily's hair wasn't brushed enough that morning. A comment about how I should really consider switching Lily to the school district near Diane's house, because apparently the one near us wasn't what it used to be. Diane had opinions about everything. My job, my parenting, the way I loaded a dishwasher, the brand of coffee I bought. Mark always said the same thing when I brought it up in the car on the way home. That's just how she is. She means well. He'd been hearing it his whole life, so to him it barely registered. To me, 6 years in, it had started to feel like static that never turned off. Renee, his younger sister, was 29, unmarried, and lived 20 minutes from their parents in an apartment Diane still paid half the rent on. Though, nobody in the family ever said that part out loud. Renee had a habit of repeating whatever critique Diane made, like a smaller, sharper echo. If Diane thought my potato salad needed more salt, Renee thought it needed a lot more salt. If Diane thought I worked too many night shifts, Renee thought it was honestly kind of sad for Lily. That Sunday was supposed to be easy. Mark's father, Walter, had turned 68 the week before, and Diane decided, without asking me, the way she decided most things, that we'd do a family dinner to celebrate, potluck style, everyone bringing a dish. I'd offered to bring the lasagna because it was Walter's favorite. He'd told me so himself the Christmas before, standing next to me at the stove while I stirred gravy. In that quiet way he had of saying nice things, when Diane wasn't in the room to interrupt him. I should explain something about Walter because it matters. Walter was nothing like Diane. He was soft-spoken, the kind of man who noticed if you'd had a long week before you said anything. He used to slip Lily $5 bills when Diane wasn't looking, and tell her not to spend it all on candy. He'd had a small stroke 2 years back, mild, but it left him with a slight tremor in his left hand and doctor's orders to keep his stress low. Diane treated those orders like decoration. She still raised her voice at him at the dinner table about things as small as which football team he'd picked that week. So when I drove up that Sunday with the lasagna riding shotgun, I wasn't nervous about Walter. I was nervous, like always, about Diane. I should have trusted my gut. The dining room was already half full when I walked in. Mark's Uncle Roger and his wife, a cousin I only saw at holidays, Renee, perched at the table scrolling her phone. Mark was out back helping his father get the grill started, so I carried the lasagna in alone, set it on the counter next to a green bean casserole and a bowl of store-bought coleslaw. And that's when Renee looked over and made her face. "Looks a little dry," she said, not even getting up to check. And then Diane was there with her fork. And then came the salad comment, and then I was carrying my lasagna back out to my car, while my mother-in-law called after me that I was being dramatic, and Renee called after me that she was just being honest. I didn't slam the door. I want that on the record. I set the lasagna gently on the passenger seat, the same way I'd carried it in, buckled the seatbelt around it because that's a habit I have, and I drove, not home, to my mother's house 15 minutes away because I knew Lily was there and because I needed 5 minutes of feeling like a person instead of a problem to be managed. My mother, Vivian, took one look at my face when I walked in carrying a full pan of lasagna and said, "What happened now?" I told her. All of it. The dry comment, the salad comment, the look on Diane's face like she'd been waiting all week to say it. Vivian didn't say anything mean about Diane. She never does. She's better than that. She just got out plates, cut into the lasagna, and said it smelled like heaven. Lily came shuffling out in her socks, nose still red from her cold, and asked if she could have a piece even though it wasn't dinner time yet. I said yes. We sat at my mother's kitchen table, the three of us, and ate lasagna straight out of the pan I'd carried home like it was something precious. Because to me in that moment, it was. That's where I was when my phone started ringing. Mark first, then Diane, then Mark again. I let the first two go to voicemail. When Mark called a third time, I picked up, mostly because I was worried something had actually happened. Where are you? His voice had an edge to it I didn't recognize at first. Not anger, something tighter. At my mom's. With Lily, you took the whole lasagna? I made it. It's mine to take. There was a pause, and in the background I could hear Diane's voice, raised, saying something I couldn't make out, and then Renee's voice underneath it, and then what sounded like Walter trying to calm everyone down, his voice low and even the way it always was. Claire, you need to come back, please. Dad's upset, and everyone's asking where the food went, and it's a whole thing. Your dad's upset that I took my own dish home? It's not just that. Another pause. Mom told everyone you stormed out. Roger's asking if there was a fight. It's embarrassing, Claire. There it was. Not are you okay? Not that was a rude thing for my mother to say to you. Just it's embarrassing. I almost said something sharp. Instead I looked across the table at my mother, who was watching me with the kind of patience she's had since I was a teenager, calling her crying about something a boy said, and I just said, I'm not bringing the lasagna back, Mark. If people are hungry, there's a casserole and a bowl of coleslaw. That'll have to do. I hung up. My mother didn't say I told you so. She just refilled my glass of iced tea and said, you know, you've been shrinking yourself at that table for years. I've watched you do it. That landed harder than anything Diane had said all day. The calls kept coming for the next hour. Renee texted first, a single line, you're being so extra over a comment about lasagna, which I didn't answer. Then Diane called, and when I picked up, mostly out of curiosity for what she'd say, her voice had shifted entirely. Gone was the clipped tone from the kitchen. Now she sounded almost pleading. Claire, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never said the lasagna was bad. I just made an observation. You told me to bring a salad next time because I'm not good at the complicated stuff. Silence on the line. She hadn't expected me to repeat it back word for word. I didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that, Diane. You've meant things like that for 6 years. I've just never left before. I heard her exhale, sharp, the sound she makes when she's deciding whether to escalate or retreat. This time she retreated. Well, Walter's been asking about you. He says the dinner doesn't feel right without you here. He didn't even want the casserole. That detail caught me, because it was true to who Walter was. Quiet protest, refusing the substitute, missing the one person at that table who never made him feel like a burden. Tell him I'm sorry I miss seeing him, I said. But I'm not driving the lasagna back over there tonight. I hung up again. My mother poured herself a glass of wine, and Lily asked if Grandma Diane was mad. In the matter-of-fact way 4-year-olds ask things, and I told her Grandma Diane was just having a hard time today, which felt like the kindest true thing I could say. It was almost 8 when Mark showed up at my mother's door alone, without calling first. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the grill or the dinner. My mother let him in, gave him a look that said be smart about this, and took Lily upstairs to give us the kitchen. He sat down across from me, the same chair I'd been sitting in for an hour, and for a long moment he didn't say anything. Then, Dad told me what he said to Mom after you left. What did he say? He said. And these are basically his exact words. If a woman drives across town to bring you your favorite meal and you let your wife and daughter humiliate her in your own kitchen, you don't deserve the meal or the woman. Mark's voice cracked a little on the last part. He said it in front of Roger. Mom didn't have anything to say back. I felt something in my chest loosen, just slightly, hearing that. Walter had said out loud what I'd wanted someone in that family to say for 6 years. He also told me, Mark continued, that this isn't the first time, that he's noticed it for a while, the comments, the way Mom and Renee talk to you. He said he thought I'd say something eventually, and he's disappointed I never have. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so, even though 6 years of I told you so were sitting right there in my throat. I just asked him what he wanted to do about it. I want to apologize, he said, not just for tonight. For not saying anything ever. I think I got so used to managing my mom that I forgot I was supposed to be managing my marriage too. We didn't fix 6 years in one kitchen conversation. I want to be honest about that, because I think stories like this sometimes make it sound too clean, too fast. But it was a start, and a real one. The kind where he actually called Diane the next day, by himself, and told her that the comments needed to stop, that I wasn't a guest to critique but his wife, and that if she couldn't manage to be kind to me at her own table, we wouldn't be coming to the table anymore. Diane didn't take it well, not at first. There were a few weeks of cold, clipped phone calls, a birthday card for Lily that didn't include the usual note. But Walter called me directly, which he'd never done in 6 years of marriage, and asked, a little awkwardly, if there was any lasagna left over, because he'd been thinking about it ever since. I made him his own pan, just for him, and Mark drove it over without me, because I wasn't ready yet to sit at that table again. Walter called that night to say it was the best thing he'd eaten all year, and that next time, he wanted to come to our place to eat it, where nobody would say a word about how it looked. It took a few months, but eventually Diane came around. Not all the way, not perfectly. People like her rarely do, but enough. The comments got quieter, the corrections got fewer. The first time I brought a dish to her house again, almost 5 months later, she didn't say a word about how it looked. She just took a bite, paused, and said it was good. It wasn't an apology. But from Diane, it was close enough to one that I let it count. Walter still asks about that lasagna more than any other dish I've ever made him, and every time he does, I think about the pan-riding shotgun in my car, seatbelt buckled around it, and the moment I decided I wasn't going to shrink myself at that table anymore.